The rain didn't fall so much as weep, a slow, cold drizzle that blurred the stained glass of the old stone chapel. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of lily and whispered grief. Michael Thorne stood at the head of the aisle, his tall frame sheathed in a suit that cost more than most of the mourners' cars. He held a single white handkerchief, its crisp linen pressed to his dry eyes as another friend of his wife stepped forward to share a memory. Lena was the light in every room, the woman sobbed, her voice cracking. Michael's jaw tightened imperceptibly. Light. He was so tired of hearing about her light. For 7 years, it had been blinding, leaving him in the shadows, the lesser half of Lena and Michael, the handsome husband to the brilliant, beloved philanthropist. He caught his own reflection in the polished mahogany of the casket. He looked every part the devastated widower, the perfect, hollowed-out expression, the slight tremor in his hand. He'd practiced in the mirror. The final prayer echoed through the vaulted ceiling. As the pallbearers, Lena's brothers and her oldest friends moved forward, Michael made his exit, a slow, solemn procession of one through the side door. The moment the heavy oak door sighed shut behind him, cutting off the organ's mournful drone, his posture changed. The weight lifted from his shoulders. He pulled his phone from his pocket, his thumb finding her contact instantly. It rang once. "Michael?" Chloe's voice was like sunlight and champagne, a stark contrast to the damp gray around him. He turned his back to the chapel, a genuine smile, the first all day, touching his lips. "It's done, sweetheart. It's finally over. Are you free?" The hope in her whisper was palpable. He glanced over his shoulder at the building where his wife's empty casket sat. "She's gone. The insurance, the estate. It all clears in 30 days. We can start our life. The real one." A soft, delighted laugh traveled through the phone. "I'm already packing. I knew you'd do it." "I knew." A small, sharp intake of breath, like a wounded bird, cut through the drizzle. Michael froze. His blood seemed to stop moving in his veins. 20 feet away, near the dripping branches of a willow tree, stood his stepson, 10-year-old Oliver. The boy's small hands were clenched at his sides, his Sunday suit too big on his thin frame. In his grip was a rumpled drawing, a crayon portrait of his mother. The rain had spotted the paper, making the bright yellow of Lena's drawn hair bleed. Oliver's eyes, Lena's exact shade of fierce, intelligent brown, were wide. They weren't filled with tears, but with a dawning, horrifying understanding. They'd heard everything. The phone slipped from Michael's numb fingers, hitting the wet pavement with a crack. Chloe's voice, tinny and confused, called his name from the speaker. "Dad?" Oliver's voice was quiet, steady. It was that steadiness that chilled Michael more than any scream could have. "What did you mean?" "Do it?" Michael's perfect world, meticulously constructed over 2 years of secret plans and poisoned promises, tilted on its axis. The most dangerous witness to his crime wasn't a detective or a lawyer. It was a quiet, artistic boy who loved his mother more than anything. And Michael, in his triumphant carelessness, had just handed that boy the truth. What Michael didn't know, what he could never have conceived, was that the casket in the chapel was empty for a reason far different than the one he'd arranged. 6 months earlier, a doctor named Maria Flores had sat across from Lena Thorne in a sterile exam room, holding a chart that told a story of betrayal. "Your blood work," Dr. Flores had said, her voice low and serious. "It shows consistent, low-dose contamination with a cardiac glycoside. Someone is making your heart wear out, Lena. Someone you let make your morning coffee." The pieces, once scattered and confusing, had snapped into a horrifying picture. Michael's sudden interest in her will. His insistence on the new, massive life insurance policy. His constant, soothing evening nightcaps. Lena's hands had trembled not from illness then, but from rage. "What can I do?" She'd whispered. "We can save your life," Dr. Flores had said, leaning forward. But it will require a death. Just not yours. Now, watching her own funeral live stream on a secure tablet from a safe house 3 states away, Lena Thorne wiped a silent tear. Not for the life she'd left behind, but for the small, heartbroken figure of her son standing in the rain, learning a cruel lesson about the man he'd called father. The hardest part was the waiting. But the trap was set. Michael had just taken the bait. The safe house was a modest, sun-drenched apartment above a bookshop in a coastal town Lena had never heard of. The air smelled of salt and old paper, a world away from the sterile luxury of her Atlanta penthouse. Lena stood at the window, watching seagulls wheel against a vast blue sky, feeling utterly untethered. He took the bait, Dr. Maria Flores said, closing her laptop. She was a compact, fierce woman with eyes that missed nothing. The staged medical records, the corrupted blood work samples you accidentally left for him to find. He used all of it to convince the coroner. He's confident. And Oliver? Lena's voice was raw. The image of his face in the rain was burned behind her eyes. Your sister has him? Emily says he's quiet. He's drawing a lot. Maria's tone softened. The child is a witness, Lena, a vulnerable one. Michael will see him as a liability now. Lena turned, her fists clenched. He already does. I heard it in his voice on that funeral footage. He was scared of what Oliver heard. She paced the small room, the ghost of a billionaire CEO in sweatpants. We need the evidence to be ironclad. We need him to confess to the attempt on my life, and we need to prove he's after Oliver's inheritance. The financial trail is being built, Maria assured her. My brother-in-law is a forensic accountant. He's tracing the shell companies Michael set up to funnel your assets. The insurance policy payout is the immediate trigger, but the will is the problem. Lena had known it would be. Her will left her entire estate, including her controlling stake in Luminous Tech, her green energy company, in a trust for Oliver. Michael was the trustee, but his access was limited to a generous annual stipend for Oliver's care. Stipend that would feel like poverty to a man like Michael. He'll try to break the trust, or... She couldn't finish the sentence. Maria did it for her, her voice grim. Or remove the beneficiary. We have to be ready. Back in Atlanta, in the stark, modern living room of the house Lena had designed, Michael poured himself 3 fingers of expensive bourbon. The ice cubes clinked like warning bells. The euphoria of the funeral had curdled into a sharp, metallic anxiety. Oliver's face, that look of betrayal. You're worrying too much, Chloe purred, patting in on bare feet. She wrapped her arms around him from behind, her perfume overwhelming the last lingering trace of Lena's citrus scent in the room. He's a kid. He heard something weird, got confused. He'll forget. He's not a normal kid, Michael muttered, downing the bourbon. He's Lena's kid. He notices things. He remembers everything. He thought of the boy's detailed drawings. The way he'd once correctly identified a business. Associates watch as a fake from across a room when he was 8. So we be extra nice to him, Chloe said, her voice taking on a calculated sweetness. We make him feel safe and loved. Until the money clears. Then, well, there are excellent boarding schools in Switzerland. Very discreet. Michael nodded slowly, the plan solidifying. Isolate the boy. Control the narrative. He pulled out his phone and pulled up a number he rarely called Lena's sister, Emily. He needed to get Oliver back under this roof, or he could be managed. When Emily answered, her voice was frosty. Michael, Emily, look, I know today was hellish for all of us, but Oliver should be home with his things, with me. There was a long pause filled with the quiet sounds of children in the background. He's shaken, Michael. What he thought he heard. I think he needs some time. With family. The word family hung in the air, an exclusion. I am his family, Michael insisted, forcing a wounded tongue. I'm all he has left. I'll send a card tonight. He ended the call before she could argue. Control. It was all about re-establishing control. He looked around the room at the abstract paintings Lena had chosen, the furniture that felt more like art than something to sit on. Soon he'd sell it all. He'd erase every trace of her and build a new, gleaming life. All he had to do was manage one small, observant boy for a few more weeks. How hard could it be? Oliver's room in his Aunt Emily's house was a shrine to a universe that no longer existed. Spaceship models he'd built with his mom hung from the ceiling. His prized possession, a framed first edition Calvin and Hobbes comic she'd found at an auction, sat on his nightstand. He sat on the floor, a sketchbook open, but he wasn't drawing spaceships today. He was drawing the funeral, the rainy backdrop, the dark shape of the chapel, and in the foreground, a man with a phone to his ear, his back turned, his posture all wrong for grief. Oliver's pencil moved with a furious, precise anger, shading the smug set of the man's shoulders. A soft knock. Ollie? Emily came in, sitting beside him. She was his mother in softer tones, with kinder eyes that were now red-rimmed. Michael called. He wants you to come home tonight. Oliver's pencil stopped. It's not home without Mom. I know, honey. Emily put an arm around him. But legally, he was happy she was gone, Aunt Emily. Oliver's voice was small but clear. On the phone? He said, it's finally over, and he was smiling. Why would he be happy? Emily's breath caught. She'd had her suspicions about Michael's convenient grief, but hearing it from Oliver made it real, terrifying. She thought of her sister's sudden, baffling heart failure at 38. A world-class athlete, a vegan, a woman of relentless vitality. It had never made sense. Listen to me, Emily said, turning him to face her. What you heard is very important, but it's also dangerous. Do you understand? Until we know what's really happening, you need to be very careful around Michael. Don't let him know what you're thinking. Is he a bad guy? Oliver asked, the question stark and heartbreaking. Emily chose her words with care. I think he might have done a very bad thing, and we need to be brave and smart to prove it. For your mom. She hugged him tight. You're not going back there tonight. I'll deal with Michael. Michael's frustration was a living thing in his chest. Emily had outright refused to send Oliver back, citing the boy's trauma. His lawyer, a bored-looking man named Mr. Henderson, confirmed the bad news in a wood-paneled office later that afternoon. The will is a fortress. Michael, Henderson droned, adjusting his glasses. Lena was very thorough. You're trustee, but you cannot touch the principal. The stipend for the boy's care is $500,000 annually. The rest, luminous tech, the properties, the portfolios, is locked until Oliver is 25. That's 17 years. Michael hissed, slamming a hand on the desk. I'm supposed to live on an allowance while sitting on $1 billion empire. It's not your empire, Henderson said mildly. It's Oliver's. Your wife's wishes were quite clear. Michael stormed out, his mind racing. The insurance money would be substantial, but it was a one-time payout. Lena's enduring wealth, her legacy, was in the company. A company he needed to control. He called Chloe from the parking garage, the echo making his voice sound hollow. There's a problem. The will. As he ranted, he didn't notice the old nondescript sedan parked 2 levels down. Inside, Detective Marcus Wright of the Financial Crimes Unit watched him through binoculars, recording the agitated performance. He'd been tipped anonymously by a concerned party about irregularities in Lena Thorne's estate planning. Michael Thorne, all-expensive suit and visible panic, was checking every box. That evening in the safe house, Lena watched the live feed from the hidden nanny cam in Oliver's old playroom. The room was empty. but the audio picked up Michael and Chloe in the hallway. "We need a new plan." Michael's voice was tense. "The boy is the key. If something happened to him, the trust would dissolve. The estate would pass to the next beneficiary." "Which is you?" Chloe asked. "After a lengthy, expensive legal battle, maybe. But if it was clearly an accident, the sympathy factor would be enormous. The court would be inclined to expedite." Lena's blood turned to ice. She'd known he was greedy, vain, a murderer. But hearing him coldly discuss her son as an obstacle to be removed unlocked a new primal chamber of fury. She looked at Maria, who was monitoring a different feed, the forensic accountant's report coming in. "We have the financial motive," Maria said quietly. "We have the means, the poison trail, though it's circumstantial. Now we have intent on tape. But it's not enough for a jury." "He's talking hypothetically." "He needs to try," Lena said, her voice terrifyingly calm. "We need to let him try and catch him in the act. For Oliver." The plan was a delicate, dangerous ballet. Lena, from the shadows, would pull the strings to force Michael's hand. The first move was through her oldest friend and Luminous Tech CFO, David Chun. David had been let in on the truth. His loyalty to Lena absolute dot. He approached Michael with an offer from a mysterious European consortium, a cash payout of Luminous Tech at a 15% premium. "They want a clean, fast acquisition," David explained in a neutral tone over lunch. "Any complications with minor beneficiaries, it spooks them." Michael's eyes glittered with avarice. A clean, fast cash exit. It was less than the long-term potential, but it was immediate, and it was his. "The minor beneficiary is a complication," Michael mused, swirling his wine. "A tragic one, but a complication nonetheless." "Tragedy," David repeated, keeping his face a careful mask. "Yes, that would certainly simplify things." The hook was set. Phase 2 was applied pressure. Lena, using an encrypted channel, posed as a whistleblower from the insurance company, emailing their fraud department about inconsistencies in her medical records. The payout was frozen pending investigation. Michael's carefully constructed world began to shudder. The insurance delay choked his immediate cash flow. The payout offer dangled a carrot he could only grab if Oliver was out of the picture. The pressure cooker was sealing done. Meanwhile, Oliver was struggling in a different way. At school, he was quiet, withdrawn. His teacher, Mr. Reynolds, a perceptive man with a kind heart, noticed the change. He found Oliver in the art room after the final bell, not drawing superheroes, but sketching a man's hand holding a delicate coffee cup. "The line's dark and heavy. That's some intense shading." "Oliver," Mr. Reynolds said, pulling up a stool. "Want to talk about it?" Oliver shook his head, then nodded, then shrugged, a child full of conflicting impulses. "It's for my mom," he finally whispered. "I'm making a record of things I saw before she passed." Oliver looked up, his eyes old and young all at once. "Before she was murdered." The word hung in the dusty, sunlit art room. Mr. Reynolds didn't flinch. He'd lost his own sister to domestic violence. He knew the sound of truth in a child's voice. "Do you have evidence, Oliver? Or just a feeling?" "I have drawings," Oliver said. "And I heard my dad planning with a lady about money after the funeral. Would you be willing to show those drawings to someone who could help? A friend of mine is a detective. Her name is Lisa Cole. She's very good at protecting kids who are brave enough to tell the truth." Detective Lisa Cole met with Oliver and Emily in a cozy, non-threatening interview room at a family advocacy center, not the police station. She was a tall black woman with a calm, grounded presence. Oliver slowly laid out his sketchbook, page by page, a story unfolded. Not in words, but in devastating images. Michael slipping a white powder into a coffee mug. Michael arguing with Lena over papers late at night, his face a caricature of rage. The funeral scene with its chilling detail. The final drawing was new. Michael and the blonde woman, Chloe, talking in the kitchen. With a thought bubble over Michael's head containing a $sign and a small, falling stick figure. Lisa Cole's professional composure didn't crack, but her heart broke a little. "Oliver," she said gently, "these are incredibly important. You are incredibly brave." She looked at Emily. "We have a dedicated crimes against children unit. This, combined with the financial investigation already underway, we can put a safety plan in place. But we need him to make a definitive move. We need him to attempt to act on his threats." "You want to use my son as bait?" Emily's voice was strained. "No," Lisa said firmly. "We want to catch a predator before he ever gets near your son again. We will have him under 24/7 surveillance. Oliver will be with you, or with us, at all times. But Michael needs to believe the path is clear for him to succeed. That's when men like him make fatal mistakes." It was the same conclusion Lena and Maria had reached from their distant vantage point. The net was closing from two sides, one legal, one personal. But they all needed the same thing: Michael Thorne's final, damning confession. The sting was built on Michael's own greed. Posing as a discreet problem solver from the shadowy world the European buyers supposedly frequented, Detective Cole's partner, Ray, made contact via an untraceable number. The message was simple: "Heard you have an inheritance problem. Can make it go away." For a price. Michael bit instantly. Paranoid, cash-strapped, and desperate, he agreed to a meeting at a derelict riverfront park after midnight. The location was all crumbling concrete and the skeletal shadows of old industrial cranes. The perfect stage for a dark bargain. Wired for sound and video, Ray waited, a hulking silhouette in the gloom. Michael arrived alone, his nervous energy visible in the jerky beam of his flashlight. "You're him?" Michael's voice was tight. "Depends. You got the money?" 250,000. "Half now, half when the package is delivered." Michael flinched at the euphemism, but nodded quickly. "The package is a 10-year-old boy. He's staying with his aunt. The house is in Brookhaven. Quiet street. Backyard isn't fenced." The details spilled out of him. A horrible, practical checklist. It needs to look like a kidnapping gone wrong. Or, he likes to climb trees. A fall could be tragic. Ray made a low noise, as if considering. A fall is messy, unreliable. A car when he's walking to school. More definitive. "Yes," Michael agreed, a rush of relief in his voice. "Definitive. When can you do it?" "Tomorrow." "The school route. You make sure he walks. I'll handle the rest." "Thank you," Michael said, the words grotesque in the context. He handed over a duffel bag of marked bills money he'd scrambled to put together, draining his last liquid accounts. "Just make it clean." "Always do." As Michael turned and hurried back to his car, a figure detached itself from the deeper shadows behind a rusted electrical box. Oliver, wearing a dark hoodie, his face pale in the moonlight. He'd insisted on coming. Detective Cole had argued fiercely against it, but Emily, after a long, tearful conversation with Lena on a secure line, had relented. "He needs to see the monster for what it is," Lena had said, her voice trembling but resolved. "Otherwise, he'll always wonder if he misunderstood." Now, Oliver understood. The cold, transactional discussion of his own murder, the relieved tone in the voice of the man who taught him to ride a bike, erased the last shadow of doubt. His tears were silent, not of fear, but of a profound, heartbreaking loss. He wasn't losing a father. He was finally burying the illusion of one. He walked over to where Ray and Detective Cole now stood. "I heard," was all he said. Cole knelt, ignoring the procedural breach. "I am so sorry, Oliver. But you are so brave. And now, because of you, he can never hurt anyone again." The arrest was swift and silent. As Michael drove home, already imagining the call from the distraught school, 3 unmarked cars boxed him in at a quiet intersection. Detective Cole opened his door. "Michael Thorne, you're under arrest for solicitation of murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and attempted murder." The Miranda rights blended with his sputtered protests. A meaningless stream of sound. From a surveillance van a block away, Lena watched the feed on a monitor. She saw Michael's face, first shocked, then furious, then crumbling into abject terror as the reality of the wires, the marked bills, the recorded conversation settled on him. She felt no triumph, only a vast, hollow exhaustion. Then she looked at the smaller monitor showing Oliver safe in the back of another car, wrapped in a blanket, holding Emily's hand. Her heart cracked and began slowly to refill. The arraignment was a media circus. "Billionaire widower plots stepson's death," the headline screamed. Michael, in an orange jumpsuit, pleaded not guilty through a harried public defender. His arrogant facade shattered, but the true act of courage happened not in court, but in a quiet room at the district attorney's office a week later. Oliver, with Emily and a child advocate by his side, sat across from Assistant DeAngelo Rossi. On the table between them was his sketchbook. "Oliver," Angela said, her voice warm but professional, "we have the audio recording. We have the money trail. We have overwhelming evidence. We may not need you to testify. But if we do, are you willing to tell a judge and jury what you saw and heard?" Oliver looked at his drawings. The coffee cup. The funeral smile. He thought of his mother's laugh, the way she'd squeeze his hand 3 times to mean, "I love you." He thought of the cold river park and the price on his head. "Yes," he said, his voice clear. "I want to tell the truth. For my mom. And for other kids who might have a bad guy in their house who smiles." It was a child's phrasing, but it held a profound wisdom. His courage wasn't vengeful. It was protective, a stand for truth itself. This decision, made by a 10-year-old, became the moral cornerstone of the prosecution's case. His courage sparked another. David Chun, armed with Oliver's testimony and the solicitation evidence, went to the luminous tech board. He played them excerpts of Michael's callous planning. He showed them the financial forensics proving Michael had been looting company resources through his shell companies even before Lena's death. The board, many of whom had loved Lena, were horrified. They voted unanimously to sever all ties with Michael, to file civil suits to recover the stolen funds, and in a move led by David to establish the Lena Thorne Foundation, funded by a percentage of company profits, dedicated to supporting children who were victims of crime and to funding domestic violence prevention. Oliver was named honorary chair. It was a legacy of light, born from darkness. Even Chloe, facing accessory charges, broke. Flipped by prosecutors, she provided the final, critical piece, the name of the online pharmacy where Michael had sourced the digitalis, and the encrypted messages where he detailed his gradual wellness plan for Lena. The evidence was now a perfect, unbreakable chain. The plea deal was offered the night before the trial was set to begin. 40 years, no parole. Take it or risk life in prison. Michael, stripped of his wealth, his lover, and his carefully crafted image, took it. In a cold, echoey room, he stood before a judge and confessed to the attempted murder of Lena Thorne and the solicitation of murder for Oliver. The formal sentencing hearing was where the true realization dawned. Not for Michael, but for everyone else in the room. Lena had decided it was time. With the criminal case resolved, the danger was past. Dressed in a simple, elegant navy suit, she walked into the back of the courtroom as the judge was summarizing Michael's crimes. "Obey, Murmurs started in the back rows and swept forward like a wave. Reporters spun, their cameras flashing. Michael's lawyer dropped a folder. And Michael himself, hearing the shifting energy, turned. He saw her, and his knees buckled. He had to be held up by the bailiffs. His face was a mask of superstitious terror, as if he were seeing a ghost. In a way, he was. "Your Honor," Lena said, her voice resonant in the stunned silence. "With the court's permission, I am Lena Thorne. I am here to see justice served for the man who tried to kill me and who planned the murder of my son." The judge, an unflappable woman named Judge Wilkins, simply nodded, a faint, approving smile on her lips. "The record will note the appearance of the presumed victim." Lena turned her gaze to Michael. There was no hatred in it, only a cold, clear pity. "You tried to erase me, Michael, to turn my life into a fund for your own. But you underestimated the people who loved me. You underestimated my sister. You underestimated my friends. And you fatally underestimated my son." She looked then to Oliver, who sat in the front row between Emily and Detective Cole. He gave her a small, steady smile, their first public reunion. Lena's voice softened, filling the room. "You thought you were taking everything, but all you did was show us what we truly had. A love stronger than poison. A bond stronger than greed. You showed my son his own incredible strength. For that, I suppose I should thank you." Her words were the final brick in his prison. They weren't about his crime, but about its utter, total failure. He hadn't just been caught. He had been meaningless. His entire plot had only served to strengthen the world he'd tried to destroy. The realization broke what was left of him. He was led away, not with defiance, but as a hollow, weeping shell. Redemption didn't belong to Michael Thorne. It belonged to the family he'd tried to shatter. It was found in the quiet, sun-drenched living room of Emily's home, now permanently shared with Lena and Oliver. It was the sound of laughter during a chaotic board game night, with David, Maria Flores, and Detective Cole all present. Covered in popcorn dud, it was in Lena's decision. With her company secure and its new philanthropic mission launched, she stepped down as CEO. "I was gone for 6 months," she told David, now the new CEO, at a small celebration. "The company thrived under you. It has a new heart. My heart is needed elsewhere." She became the full-time director of her foundation and a full-time mother. Forgiveness was a more complex journey. Oliver, in therapy, worked through the betrayal. One afternoon, he asked Lena, "Do I have to forgive him?" She pulled him close. "No, baby. Forgiveness isn't something you owe anyone. It's something you give yourself if and when you're ready. It just means letting go of the anger so it doesn't weigh you down. You can let go of the weight without ever saying what he did was okay." Oliver thought about it. Weeks later, he was working on a new drawing, a sprawling tree with deep roots and many branches, labeled with names: Mom, Aunt Emily, Grandma, David, Dr. Maria, Lisa, Mr. Reynolds. At the very bottom, a small, withered branch was labeled Michael. It was attached, a part of the tree's history, but it bore no leaves, no fruit. It was just there, a fact, not a source of sustenance, but a reminder of where the tree had been wounded and how strongly it had grown around the scar. That was his forgiveness. Not an absolution, but an integration. The bad thing was part of his story, but it did not define the plot. A year to the day after the funeral, that wasn't. They held a different ceremony. In the backyard of their new cozy home with a big tree perfect for climbing, they planted a sapling, a young, resilient oak. Lena, Oliver, and Emily each placed a hand on the trunk as it was settled into the earth. "This is for new beginnings," Lena said. "For roots that hold and branches that reach for the light." Oliver added a handful of rich soil. "And for remembering," he said softly. "Later, As fireflies dotted the twilight, Lena sat on the porch swing with Emily. Inside, Oliver was teaching David how to beat the final level of his favorite video game. There are shouts of laughter drifting through the screen door. "He's okay," Emily said. Not as a question, but as a wonder. "He's more than okay," Lena replied, leaning her head on her sister's shoulder. "He learned the worst lesson too early, but he also learned the best ones. That courage is telling the truth when you're scared. That love is an action, not just a feeling. That family is who shows up, not just who shares your name." She looked through the window at her son's glowing, animated face. The story could have ended in tragedy. A poisoned wife, a murdered boy, a monster triumphant. But it didn't because of a chain of courage. A doctor's moral bravery. A sister's protective ferocity. A detective's unwavering commitment. A teacher's gentle attention. A friend's loyal integrity. And a boy with a pencil and a heart brave enough to break, and strong enough to keep drawing the truth. The moral was not that evil doesn't exist. It does. It wears handsome suits and speaks in loving tones. The moral was that evil is almost always smaller than it seems. It's greedy, short-sighted, and lonely. And it is no match for the collective, connected light of ordinary people choosing to be kind, to be brave, to pay attention, to show up. Lena squeezed Emily's hand 3 times. The oak sapling swayed gently in the night breeze, already taking root in the dark, fertile soil, ready for whatever the next season would bring. Their story wasn't about an ending. It was about a foundation, strong enough now to build a whole, joyful future upon. And it was finally, truly their own.